Captain Jack Harmon, along with his old friend Lieutenant Marco Diaz, maneuvered through the bustling corridors of the space station Pax Valaris, each step echoing slightly under the hum of the busy interstellar hub. The station, a massive structure floating at the edge of the Andromeda Galaxy, served as a neutral zone for species from across the universe, facilitating both diplomacy and commerce. "Marco, I'm telling you, they haven't tried anything like Earth's food. It's going to be a hit," Jack exclaimed, his voice filled with the enthusiasm of a child with a new toy. Marco, ever the skeptic, raised an eyebrow. "Or it could cause a diplomatic incident. You know how sensitive these intergalactic taste buds can be." Undeterred, Jack led them to the Galactic Cafeteria, a sprawling area filled with exotic aromas and an array of colors that only diverse alien species could provide. The air was a mosaic of smells ranging from the tangy zest of growler fruit to the pungent sting of Zeltrax spices. As they set up their booth, Jack unveiled his prized possessions: hot dogs, pizza, tacos, and the piece de resistance, chili cheese fries. He had gone to great lengths to ensure all ingredients were cleared for non-human consumption, though how they'd actually react remained to be seen. "I can't believe you got clearance for this, Jack," Marco muttered as he arranged the last of the tacos. "Trust me, it's all about cultural exchange, right? Food is the universal language." Jack winked, turning his attention to the first curious onlookers, a group of slender, blue-skinned Ilarian traders. "Greetings, friends. Care for a taste of Earth's finest?" Jack beckoned them over with a broad smile. One of the Ilarians, who introduced himself as Sorlin, hesitated before picking up a taco. He sniffed it cautiously, his eyes widening at the unfamiliar scents. "What is this item?" he asked, his voice a mix of curiosity and caution. "It's a taco. Beef, cheese, lettuce, and a special sauce wrapped in a soft shell. Go on, give it a try," Jack encouraged, his hands gesturing invitingly. Sorlin took a tentative bite, his face contorting as the flavors exploded in his mouth. Around them, the crowd grew, whispers and murmurs filling the air as more aliens watched. "It's quite powerful," Sorlin finally declared, his tone unsure whether this was a compliment or a complaint. "That's the spirit," Jack laughed, clapping him gently on the back. "It's supposed to pack a punch." Marco watched the growing crowd warily. "Jack, maybe we should slow down. Let's not turn this into a frenzy." "No, this is perfect," Jack's eyes sparkled. "See, they love it. Earth might just become the new culinary capital of the galaxy." As Jack distributed more samples, the reactions varied wildly. Some aliens delighted in the new tastes, while others looked like they might keel over. Suddenly, a loud commotion at the end of the table caught their attention. An alien with 6 arms and an iridescent hide was gesticulating wildly, his voice rising in pitch. "Water! Need water!" he squawked, the universal translator barely keeping up with his speed. "Oh, the chili must have been too much," Jack realized, rushing over with a pitcher of water. As he tended to the overwhelmed diner, Marco couldn't help but chuckle. "You're either going to be a hero, Jack, or the first man to start a war with a hot dog." Jack just grinned, handing another hot dog to a curious new customer. As long as they keep coming back, we're in good shape. The chapter closed with Jack and Marco surrounded by a mix of fascinated and flustered aliens, each trying to make sense of Earth's culinary offerings. The scene was chaotic, but Jack's optimism never waned. This was the beginning of something big. Whether that was good or bad, only time would tell. As the crowd in the Galactic Cafeteria swelled, Jack's excitement matched the rising din of alien chatter and clinking utensils. Word had quickly spread about the Earth food booth, and beings from across the galaxy crowded around, eager to sample these exotic flavors. "Jack, look at this. They can't get enough," Marco called out over the noise, handing out another plate of chili cheese fries to a group of tentacled creatures from the swampy world of Naxos. "It's amazing, isn't it?" Jack replied, his hands busy preparing another batch of tacos. "Just wait until they try the pizza." Meanwhile, an elegantly dressed figure approached the booth with a dignified air. He was Sylar, an ambassador from the technologically advanced planet of Virenia. His sharp eyes studied the human duo as he made his way through the crowd. "Gentlemen," Sylar began, his voice smooth and measured, "I must admit your initiative is quite the spectacle. However, are you certain this is wise? Our dietary regulations are quite complex." Jack handed a plate of pizza to a small, furry alien who squealed in delight before turning to address Sylar. Ambassador, we've taken all necessary precautions. The station authorities approved all the ingredients. It's all safe, I assure you. Selar nodded, though his expression remained unreadable. Very well. I shall partake in your experiment, then. He accepted a slice of pizza, his movements precise and deliberate. With the first bite, his eyes widened slightly, a subtle but clear sign of approval. Around them, the reactions to the Earth cuisine were a wild mix of joy, confusion, and occasional discomfort. A Zeltraxian mother, wary at first, allowed her younglings a small bite of a hot dog, only to find them tugging at her for more. "This is phenomenal, Jack," Marco said, watching a pair of Galtharians debating over the last piece of taco. "But are we sure this won't lead to any complications?" Jack's confidence didn't waver. "It's food, Marco. The worst that could happen has already been considered. We're bringing joy here." As they spoke, a loud guffaw erupted from the corner of the room. A large, bear-like Ursate slapped his knee, chuckling heartily with a mouthful of taco. "It tickles the tongue," he roared with laughter, his booming voice drawing even more spectators. Yet, not all was going smoothly. Near the back, a pair of Lithians, known for their sensitive metabolic systems, whispered urgently among themselves, their faces turning a shade of green that was definitely not their natural hue. They rushed away, leaving half-eaten food behind. "Should we check on them?" Marco asked, concern creasing his brow. Jack shook his head. "They're probably just not used to the spices. Let's keep an eye on it, though. No need to alarm everyone just yet." Despite the mixed reactions, the booth remained a hotspot of activity. Jack and Marco worked tirelessly, serving dish after dish, explaining Earth's cuisines and sharing laughs and stories with their new alien friends. The universal love for good food seemed to transcend the vastness of space, at least for the moment. As the makeshift feast continued, Jack found himself reflecting on the simplicity of sharing a meal and the complex interplay of cultures it represented. With each slice of pizza and every spicy bite of taco, barriers were broken and connections were forged. Yet, the true impact of their culinary adventure was yet to unfold, and the galaxy was watching closely. The morning after the feast was markedly quieter in the Galactic Cafeteria, the usual hum of conversation replaced by a subdued murmur. Jack and Marco surveyed the aftermath, tables littered with remnants of Earth's cuisine, wrappers, empty plates, and half-eaten slices of pizza. The event had been a resounding success, or so they had thought, until they noticed the medical teams bustling about. Dr. Lena Kresh, the station's chief medical officer, approached them with a stern look. "Captain Harmon, Lieutenant Diaz, we need to talk," she said, her voice carrying a weight that immediately set Jack's nerves on edge. "What's the situation, Doctor?" Jack asked, trying to maintain a calm exterior. "It's about last night's sampling," Dr. Kresh began, flipping through her data tablet. "We've had numerous reports of adverse reactions. Nothing fatal, thankfully, but several species have reported severe indigestion and allergic responses." Marco winced. "We made sure everything was approved." "Approved doesn't always mean compatible, Lieutenant," Dr. Kresh replied. "Our guests come from a wide range of ecosystems. What's benign to one can be toxic to another." Jack rubbed the back of his neck. "How can we help, Doctor?" "I need you to provide full disclosure of all ingredients used. We have to identify the allergens and issue dietary warnings," she explained, her tone more of a plea than a command. As they walked through the cafeteria, assisting Dr. Kresh, Jack couldn't help but feel responsible for the chaos. His intent to share a piece of Earth had backfired in a way he hadn't anticipated. They passed a group of Valerians who had enjoyed the feast the previous day. The sight of their grateful nods was a small comfort, but did little to alleviate his growing concern. The day continued with Jack and Marco providing details to medical staff while helping to soothe disgruntled aliens. News of the incident had begun to spread across the station, drawing curious and concerned crowds. Rumors swirled about bans on Earth food and restrictions on human interaction in the cafeteria. In the midst of the turmoil, a message arrived from Station Commander Tyrell. "Captain Harmon, report to my office immediately." The message read, its brevity belying the seriousness of the situation. Upon entering Commander Tyrell's office, Jack found the commander seated, his expression grim. "Jack, what happened last night was unprecedented. While I appreciate the spirit of what you were trying to do, it's caused a significant uproar." "I understand, sir," Jack replied. "I assure you we had no idea this would happen." "I believe you," Commander Tyrell said slowly. "But good intentions don't always make for good outcomes. This incident has reached the ears of the Galactic Council. They're concerned about the potential for further issues. Jack's heart sank. What does this mean for us? It means we need to mitigate this immediately. I want a full report on the event, every dish served, and every species affected, Commander Tyrell instructed. Yes, sir, Jack said, standing a bit straighter. As he left the commander's office, Jack pondered the next steps. The day had been long, and the path forward was unclear. He realized that resolving the chaos would require more than just good food and good intentions. It would take understanding, diplomacy, and perhaps a bit of humility, qualities Jack was prepared to show to mend the bonds frayed by a simple Earth feast. The next few days on Pax Valaris were tense as the impact of the Earth food event continued to unfold. Reports of the adverse effects had not only circulated within the station, but had now reached distant corners of the galaxy. Galactic news networks picked up the story, spinning headlines about the chaotic culinary encounter and interstellar indigestion caused by human cuisine. Jack sat in the cafeteria, now noticeably emptier, scrolling through the news on his datapad. Beside him, Marco sipped his coffee, frowning at the latest news feed. This is turning into a real mess, Jack. Look at this. 3 different planetary governments are considering trade sanctions against human products. Jack shook his head, his usual optimism dimming. We just wanted to share something from home. How did it get this complicated? It's not just about food anymore, Jack. It's about human presence in the galaxy. We're still newcomers, and this... Marco gestured to the news on his screen. This feeds into every fear about us. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent call from Zara, Jack's contact within the station's diplomatic corps. Jack, you better come to the council chamber. There's a meeting about the incident, and it sounds like they're pushing for immediate action. Arriving at the chamber, Jack and Marco found themselves amidst a flurry of activity. Representatives of various alien races were engaged in heated discussions, their translators working overtime to keep up with the cacophony of languages. At the center of the room, a large holographic display showed a list of grievances filed by different species. Sylar, the Varinia ambassador Jack had met during the feast, caught his eye and nodded gravely. Approaching him, Jack asked, Ambassador Sylar, what's the situation? The council is divided, Sylar explained. While some are calling for calm and thorough investigation, others demand immediate restrictions on all human activities in communal areas. They fear contamination, not just physical, but cultural. Jack frowned. We didn't mean any harm, Ambassador. I believe you, Jack, Sylar replied. But fear often leads to rash decisions, and right now, fear is a currency many are willing to trade. As the council called the meeting to order, a Draconis delegate, known for their strict dietary laws and skepticism of humans, took the floor. This incident proves that humans are reckless, endangering us all with their irresponsible actions. We demand a suspension of all human food services on multi-species stations and a review of human trade permits. Jack felt his pulse quicken. This was worse than he thought. He glanced at Marco, who returned a worried look. The council's decision could set a precedent that might affect human interactions in galactic society for generations. Throughout the meeting, Jack listened as more delegates expressed their concerns. Some spoke of potential health crises. Others speculated about the deeper implications of allowing humans to spread their influence unchecked. When it was his turn to speak, Jack stood, clearing his throat. Ladies, gentlemen, and esteemed beings, he began, his voice steady. What happened at the feast was unfortunate. We came with open hands and open hearts, wanting to share a piece of our world with you. Yes, we made mistakes, and for that we are profoundly sorry. But let this not be a moment that divides us. Let it instead be a lesson in understanding and cooperation. Jack's plea was met with mixed reactions, some nods of agreement, others skeptical frowns. After hours of debate, the council decided to form a committee to investigate the incident further and to temporarily suspend all human-prepared food services in communal areas. As Jack and Marco left the chamber, the weight of the council's decision hung heavily between them. This was just the beginning, and the road to mending relationships and restoring trust was going to be a long one. In the days following the council meeting, the atmosphere aboard Pax Valaris grew increasingly strained. News of the temporary suspension of human food services stirred discontent among human residents and sympathizers who viewed the measure as discriminatory. Meanwhile, the Draconis delegates' harsh words echoed through the station, intensifying the scrutiny on all human activities. Jack and Marco, having become the unintended faces of the incident, found themselves navigating a complex web of political maneuvering and public relations. Their every move was watched, their intentions questioned. During a strategy meeting in Jack's cramped office, the duo discussed their next steps with a small group of human diplomats and legal advisors. The room was tense, the air thick with concern. "We need to counter this narrative that humans are a reckless threat," Jack asserted, his voice firm despite the uncertainty churning inside him. "If we let this stand, it's not just about food anymore. It could affect every aspect of human involvement in galactic affairs." Marco nodded in agreement. "We need allies. There are species who have been trading with humans for decades. They know we're not the villains here." As they were strategizing, an urgent message arrived from Sylar, asking Jack to meet him privately. Curious and slightly apprehensive, Jack headed to the designated meeting spot, a quiet observation deck overlooking the starlit expanse of space. Sylar was already there, his expression more serious than usual. "Jack, there's something you need to know," he began, his voice low. "The Dracones are pushing for more than just a suspension of human food services. They've proposed a new set of regulations that could effectively isolate humans from many communal sectors of the galaxy." Jack's heart sank. How widespread is the support for this? "It's gaining traction," Sylar admitted. "Fear has a way of spreading faster than understanding. And there's something else. There are rumors of an ultimatum being prepared. If the Council doesn't act against human interests, the Draconis and their allies might take unilateral steps." Frustrated, Jack ran a hand through his hair. "This is spiraling out of control. We just wanted to share a piece of home." Sylar placed a hand on Jack's shoulder. "I know, my friend, and many of us understand that. But the galaxy is a complex network of mistrust and old rivalries. Your initiative touched a nerve." Jack looked out at the stars, feeling the weight of the galaxy on his shoulders. "What do you suggest we do?" "Continue to seek allies, build bridges, not just with governments but with people. Show them who humans really are." Sylar's advice was sincere. "And be prepared. The ultimatum could come any day now." With a heavy heart, Jack returned to his team, relaying the news and reinforcing their resolve to fight back with diplomacy and unity. They expanded their outreach, setting up interspecies cultural exchanges and educational programs, hoping to shift the narrative from fear to friendship. However, as the rumors of the ultimatum turned into reality, the situation escalated quickly. A formal declaration was issued by the Draconis-led coalition, giving the Galactic Council a deadline to enforce the new regulations against human participation in shared galactic spaces. The ultimatum divided the Council and sent ripples of anxiety throughout the galaxy. Species that had once been neutral began taking sides, and the potential for a peaceful resolution seemed to slip further away. Jack and Marco worked tirelessly, meeting with delegates, participating in forums, and using every diplomatic channel available to them to plead their case. They argued that punishing all humans for a single mishap was not only unfair, but would set a dangerous precedent for how misunderstandings were handled in the future. As the deadline approached, tensions reached a boiling point. The galaxy watched, holding its breath, as humans fought not just for their right to share a meal, but for their place in the cosmic community. The ultimatum issued by the Draconis and their coalition had pushed the galaxy to the brink of conflict. As the deadline loomed, diplomatic talks faltered and positions hardened. The Galactic Council was split, with several influential members siding with the Draconis, advocating for strict regulations that would marginalize human activities throughout shared galactic territories. Jack and Marco, along with their team, had worked tirelessly to counter the rising tide of anti-human sentiment. Despite their efforts, the situation deteriorated when a minor skirmish broke out between human traders and a Draconis patrol on the border of neutral space. The incident, though initially small, was blown out of proportion by media on both sides, igniting a firestorm of outrage and calls for action. In the crowded conference room aboard Pax Valeris, Jack met with human military leaders and diplomats to discuss their options. "We can't let this go any further," Jack declared, his voice resolute amidst the murmurs of agreement and concern. "If they push us out, if they shut us down, it won't stop here. We need to prepare for the worst while hoping for the best." Marco, looking over the latest intelligence reports, added, "There are movements in the Draconis fleet. They're mobilizing. It's not just posturing anymore. They're gearing up for something big." The meeting was interrupted by an urgent communication from the Galactic Council. The message was clear. The Draconis-led coalition had officially declared a state of emergency, citing the Border Skirmish as proof of human aggression. Effective immediately, all human-operated stations were to be placed under surveillance, and human fleets were to stand down or face direct military intervention. "We have to defend ourselves," one of the military commanders asserted. "We can't just stand by and watch as they strip us of our rights and our dignity." Jack knew he couldn't argue with that. The time for diplomacy had passed, at least for the moment. "All right, prepare our forces, but keep them on defensive maneuvers only for now. We can't afford to be seen as the aggressors." As the military mobilized, Jack and Marco focused on rallying support from other species. They reached out to old allies and even tried to open channels with more neutral parties within the council. Every meeting, every communication was crucial, but the news from the front lines grew increasingly grim. The first major engagement occurred near a human outpost in the Orion sector. Draconis forces, supported by their allies, launched a surprise attack, hoping to quickly overpower the lightly defended station. However, the humans held their ground, repelling the attack with a combination of guile and the advanced defensive technology Earth had developed. The battle was a wake-up call for the entire galaxy. Images of the conflict, showing humans and Draconis locked in a fierce struggle, flooded the galactic net, sparking widespread alarm. The conflict, once a distant possibility, had become a harsh reality. In the aftermath of the battle, Jack addressed a gathering of human and alien press on Pax Valeris. "This isn't just about food or cultural misunderstandings anymore," he stated solemnly. "This is about whether the galaxy can be a home for all of us, diverse and different, but united in our desire for peace and prosperity. We didn't start this war, but we will defend ourselves." The war escalated quickly, with skirmishes and battles spreading across contested zones. Jack found himself more in a military role than he had ever anticipated, coordinating defense strategies and working with allies to contain the conflict. His plea for peace echoed across the galaxy, a lone voice of reason in a chorus of fear and anger. As the war raged on, the lines between right and wrong blurred, and the stakes grew ever higher. Jack knew that winning battles wasn't enough. He needed to win hearts and minds, to turn the tide not just in space, but in the perception of humanity across the galaxy. The task was daunting, but Jack, with Marco at his side, was not ready to give up. The fight for their place in the galaxy had just begun, and they were determined to see it through, for peace, for justice, and for the future of all interstellar beings. The war, which had begun over a culinary mishap, had now morphed into a desperate struggle for human survival and acceptance in the galaxy. Jack and Marco, alongside their assembled team of human and alien diplomats, worked tirelessly behind the scenes to turn the tide of the conflict. Jack met with his team in a secure conference room aboard Pax Valeris. The room was filled with holographic maps displaying the current state of the galaxy's conflict zones. "We need a new approach," Jack asserted, his gaze sweeping over the faces of his team. "Winning this war isn't just about holding our ground. We need to change the narrative and win over those who are still undecided." Marco, ever the strategist, chimed in. "We've intercepted communications that suggest a fracture within the Draconis coalition. Some members are growing wary of the war's direction and its costs." Seizing on this intelligence, Jack proposed a daring plan. "Let's exploit these fractures. If we can offer them an exit that preserves their dignity and gives them a stake in peace, they might just take it." With a plan in motion, Jack embarked on a series of covert diplomatic missions, meeting with representatives of the wavering alien species. Each meeting was fraught with risk, but the potential rewards were immense. Slowly, through a combination of diplomacy, promises of mutual benefit, and sheer human tenacity, Jack began to see results. Several smaller members of the Draconis coalition agreed to secret peace talks. Meanwhile, the war continued to rage. Human and allied alien forces engaged the Draconis and their staunchest allies in a series of intense battles. Marco led a crucial operation to defend a strategic outpost that was key to human supply lines. The battle was fierce, with significant casualties on both sides, but Marco's leadership helped secure a hard-fought victory. The success of the battle provided the leverage Jack needed. With proof that humans could not only defend themselves but also claim victory, he pressed for more members of the opposing coalition to reconsider their positions. The turning point came during a high-stakes summit on a neutral planet. Jack and his team presented a vision of a galaxy where diversity was not just tolerated, but celebrated. They offered economic incentives, shared defense pacts, and cultural exchange programs. Jack's speech at the summit was broadcast across the galaxy. We are not your enemies. We are pioneers, explorers, and yes, sometimes we make mistakes. But our goal has always been to share in the galaxy's vast wonders. Let us find common ground not in the battles we fight, but in the peace we can build together. As the summit concluded, several key species from the Draconis Coalition announced their intent to cease hostilities and pursue peace. This caused a domino effect, weakening the resolve of others who were less committed to the conflict. Back on Pax Valaris, as news of the successful summit spread, Jack and Marco watched as public opinion began to shift. Media outlets, once critical of human actions, now covered the stories of bravery, sacrifice, and diplomatic efforts that had led to a breakthrough in peace talks. In the war's aftermath, as ceasefire agreements turned into formal peace treaties, Jack's role transitioned from military coordinator to chief diplomat. His efforts to mend fences and build bridges became the foundation for a new galactic alliance. The galaxy, once on the brink of a prolonged and devastating conflict, found a new path forward, thanks in large part to the human capacity for resilience, understanding, and the relentless pursuit of peace. Jack and Marco, once soldiers in a cosmic conflict, now stood as architects of a new era, one that promised a brighter future for all species within the galaxy. In the aftermath of the summit, a palpable sense of relief washed over the galaxy. The peace agreement signed marked not just the end of hostilities, but also the beginning of a new era of interstellar cooperation and understanding. Jack, having been at the forefront of the peace efforts, was now seen not just as a former military leader, but as a visionary peacemaker. As the galaxy began to heal, Jack proposed an initiative that symbolized his hopes for the future, the Interstellar Food Festival. This event was to be held on Pax Valaris, the very place where the conflict had unwittingly begun. The festival would showcase the diverse culinary traditions of the galaxy's many species, including, of course, human cuisine. The planning for the festival was meticulous. Jack worked closely with Marco and a team of chefs, diplomats, and cultural ambassadors from various planets. Each participant was eager to share a piece of their home world, turning the event into a mosaic of flavors, colors, and aromas. As the festival day arrived, the space station was transformed. Booths adorned with vibrant banners and exotic decorations filled the central promenade, each offering visitors a taste of different planetary delicacies. The air was filled with a cacophony of sounds, music from distant worlds, laughter, and the sizzling of exotic foods being prepared. Jack walked through the festival, Marco at his side as they sampled dishes and exchanged stories with the vendors. "Remember when we thought introducing Earth food here was a good idea?" Jack chuckled, handing Marco a plate of what looked like steaming purple noodles. Marco laughed, taking a bite. "Turns out it was a great idea, just needed a bit of diplomacy to get it right." The festival was not just a culinary success, but a public relations triumph. Media from across the galaxy broadcasted the event, showing images of former foes laughing together, sharing meals, and discussing their differences over dishes they had once found strange or intimidating. During the festival, Jack gave a short speech, which was broadcast live across many worlds. "Today we come together not to forget our past, but to build on it. Food has the power to bring us together, to teach us about each other, and to build bridges where there were once walls." The response was overwhelming. Viewers from hundreds of planets sent in messages of support and hope. Many spoke of their desire to host similar events, to continue the tradition of sharing and learning through food. As the festival drew to a close, Jack and Marco stood watching the sunset over the station's horizon. Around them, the cleanup crews were busy, but a few groups of aliens and humans lingered, chatting animatedly. "You know, Marco, I think we might have started something bigger than us," Jack said thoughtfully, watching a group of children, human and alien alike, chasing each other in a game of tag. Marco nodded, smiling. "Who would have thought, huh? Peace through cuisine. It's almost poetic." The festival became an annual event, growing each year, adding more species and dishes to its lineup. It served as a living testament to the power of cultural exchange and the simple act of sharing a meal. Jack's journey from a chef wanting to share his culinary delights to a galactic peacemaker had been fraught with challenges, but as he watched the joy and unity at the festival, he knew every struggle had been worth it. This festival was not just a celebration of food, it was a celebration of peace, understanding, and the diverse tapestry of cultures throughout the galaxy.